is subtraction, ladies and gentlemen, with regrouping. I always like to do one of the problems the hard way first, and then do it the easy way, or whatever other way there is. First of all, anytime you're given a fraction, let's say you have, I don't know what I'm taking out of the book here. 4 1/3 minus 1 2/3. 4 1/3 minus 1 2/3. Step number 1, children, without being said, is to, Jaden, shoot. Sir? Write them up and down. So your first thing is you change this, and when you write it on your paper, feel free to write it up and down. First thing, you don't have to write them side by side. Write them up and down. Just write it like this: 4 1/3 minus. Sorry. 4 1/3 minus 1 2/3. Now, let us look at this. Let's do the actual, and you're not going to do this, but we'll do this for this one. You won't do this on your paper, but here's the deal. You have 4 1/3, which looks a little like this. There's my 1/3. And from that, I am subtracting 1 2/3. Well, if you do that, let's take 1 away right away. So let's take this one away, right? If I take away 2/3 more, I can take away this one, right? Which is one of those 2/3, and then I have to take away what? Another 1/3, correct? So that means I remove like this piece right here. So I know my answer is going to be 2 whole ones and 2/3 of another one. So I get 2 2/3 is my answer. But that doesn't really work so well when you're starting to do like 75 5/16 minus 22 and 21/16 or whatever it is there. So we're going to do it with regrouping here. 4 1/3 minus 2, 1 2/3. And here's the deal. It's a pretty simple little process there. Just like with normal subtraction, if you can't subtract this fraction from that fraction, I have to borrow. Just like with normal subtraction, when I borrow, this 4 becomes a 3, okay? But unlike what you're used to doing in a base system of 10, you do not put a 10 up here and make this 11. That doesn't work, okay? What you have to think about is this. I took one of those circles away from here, and I'm combining it with this 1/3. And in order to do that, since this is in thirds, I have to think about that one circle being thirds. And if I cut one circle into thirds, how many thirds is that? So you're really combining 3/3 with this when you take one away from that. So the top fraction actually becomes 4/3, because that is 1 plus the 1/3 I started with, one whole circle. So now I can take 4/3 or 2/3 from 4/3 and I get 2/3, and I can take 1 from 3 and get 2. Now, you don't have to do that. I just wanted to show you why that is. There is a simple little rule that comes into effect every time you have to borrow with fractions. Okay, every time you have to borrow a fraction. I'm going to do one more and then I'll ask you to see if you know. Let's say you have 7 1/8, and you're subtracting 4 5/8. I can't take 5/8 from 1/8, so I borrow, right? This becomes a 6. What number is going to go up here? This is always going to stay an 8. Does anybody know what number that is? How many 8s are in one circle? If I take one circle away, how many 8s is that? 8 8s. So if I add 8 8s to 1 8, I get 9 8s. Now, when you look over here, can you see some sort of a relationship? I changed 1/3 to 4/3. I changed 1/8 to 9 8. Does anybody think of something that you can just do instead of thinking the whole one circle thing there? Lainey?
One more than the other one.
Not always. Because if this would have been 3 8s, adding 8 8s to that would have made 11 8s. So that's not adding one more than the thing on the bottom is or whatever. It is, Elijah? Yeah, it is taking these two numbers and adding them together. That's your new top number. So let's write that down so you have it for all time. To borrow, comma, take 1 away from the whole number, then add the top and bottom of the fraction for the new top and keep the same bottom. I really should be using the highfalutin math words for top and bottom. I should really be saying numerator and denominator, but we'll just leave it for now. So let's look at, so no matter how hard the problem is, let's say you've got 362 and 5/9, and from that you're subtracting 183 and 8/9. Okay, and now make sure that you only borrow when you need to borrow. If this would have been a higher fraction, you don't have to, it's not always you're going to borrow, only when the fraction on top is smaller. Okay, so I need to take 1 away from the whole number, so this becomes 361. My new top number over here is what I get when I add 9 and 5. You add these two numbers together, 9 plus 5, that's your new top number. It's a 14. And then you can do the subtracting. 8 from 14 is 6. 9 stays the same, and then you subtract the rest like normal. 8, 7, 178 and 6/9, which unfortunately can be reduced to, have we reduced? We have, don't we? Yeah. 2/3. You got that? It's a pretty simple little thing, but the reason why you do it is because when you take 1 away from this, you're really adding 9/9, which is what 1 is. Let me give one for you to try. What if I have 1,013/25 minus 16/19/25? See if you can do that on a relatively hard, bizarre, sort of really awkward sort of numbers. So if you can do the really hard ones, you should be able to. Should be pretty close to being done. Riley Harrington says,
984 and 12/25.
well, let's check and see here. I can't take 19 from 13, so I got to borrow from 1,000, correct? If I take 1 away from 1,000, unfortunately, that makes 999. My new fraction is what I get when I add these two numbers together, which happens to be 38, correct? If I take 19 from 38, I get 19. 25 stays, and now I have to take 16 from 999. 6 from 9 is 3. 1 from 9 is 8. Nothing from 9 is 9.
I see it later on.
983 and 19/25. How many people came up with that one? How many people went wrong when they borrowed one from 1,000? Is it 999? What'd you get when you borrowed one from 1,000? I'm sure you did this, did you not? This is probably really how you should have done it. I can't borrow from the 0, I can't borrow from that, so this becomes a 0, This becomes a 10, I borrow from that, it becomes a 9, this becomes a 10, that becomes a 9, this becomes a 10, but it's, no, it can't stay a 10 because I'm borrowing from it, it becomes a 9. 9 on 9 is 9. Or you can just think, take 1 away from 1,000. All right, for tomorrow. Are we on 48 already? Woo. Smoke.